This is a CBS News special report. I'm Gail King in New York. We've just received the news that Aretha Franklin, the brilliant singer and songwriter known for decades as the Queen of Soul, died this morning at her Detroit home of advanced pancreatic cancer. That news coming to us from her publicist just minutes ago. She was 76 years old. She had overcome a series of health problems in recent years. Franklin's music and larger-than-life voice were certainly unmistakable. Many of her songs were anthems for women and people of color. As Vladimir Dudier reports, Franklin shaped American history along with American music.
For 6 decades, Aretha Franklin's career demanded just that, respect. Her songs about womanhood, strength, and heartbreak have transcended generations. A child prodigy by many accounts, Franklin learned to play piano by ear. She grew up singing gospel at a Detroit church where her famous preacher father was a minister. In 1961, Franklin made the transition from gospel singer to a pop singer. And with the release of her first secular album, her star quickly began to rise. The Queen of Soul's career really took off in the late 1960s when she released her rendition of the song, Respect.
Her name is synonymous with respect.
Billy Johnson Jr. is a music consultant.
That song just took off, and that song, Respect, ended up becoming her first Grammy as well.
Franklin would go on to win 18 Grammy Awards. And perform at inaugural events for 3 presidents. But the road to get there was often rocky. Born in Memphis, Franklin was raised in Detroit by a single father. Her mother moved away when she was just 6 years old, and 4 years later, she died of a heart attack. Just shy of her 13th birthday, Franklin gave birth to her first child. Less than 2 years later, she gave birth to the second of 4 children. Life did not get easier for Franklin in adulthood. According to her biography, Franklin struggled with depression, alcoholism, and she had a weight problem. She was overwhelmed by fear and obsessed with control, the author wrote. Franklin would not step on an airplane or ride a bus through thunderstorms out of fear, and she worried the public would forget her. But her fans never did. In recent years, she sang for the Pope when he visited the U.S. And in 2015, she brought President Obama to tears during the Kennedy Center honors while singing A Natural Woman. Over the last decade, Franklin's health seemed to decline. In an interview with Anthony Mason for CBS Sunday Morning in 2011, he asked her about it.
How is your health?
My health is wonderful. It is fabulous now.
People were worried about you.
Yeah, I was worried.
There were a lot of rumors about what you had, what you went through. Can you tell us anything?
It wasn't anything, well, it wasn't that.
Franklin's last known performance was in November 2017 for Elton John's AIDS Foundation Fall Gala. And, like always, the Queen of Soul delivered.
Franklin was the first woman to be inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. She was also known as a first-rate songwriter. She lived most of her life in Detroit, where she died this morning. And it's so interesting, John, because, you know, we've been hearing from the beginning of the week that her family had gathered and friends had gathered, that she was gravely ill and that the end was near. But you kept thinking day after day that maybe, just maybe, because then you'd hear reports that she was alert and talking to people. Even when it's expected, it still is a very, still feels like a little punch.
It does, especially somebody who's been so much a part of our culture, who is right around the corner, it seems, all the time. Her songs are in your head or you're hearing them. And the one that's in mine right now is she sang at Martin Luther King's memorial, "Precious Lord, Take My Hand." And somebody with that gospel background, that's what she's doing now.
Mine will always be Natural Woman. I always love that. And her last performance was at the Elton John Foundation dinner here in New York, and I was there for that performance. And when she walked out on the stage, people gasped because she had lost a lot of weight. She didn't look well at the time, and this was last November, but her voice was certainly still there. With us now on the telephone is journalist Alan Light, who has interviewed Aretha Franklin a number of times. Good morning to you, Alan. What are you thinking?
Well, you know, it's hardly a surprise. We've obviously been waiting since we got word earlier this week, but it's still shocking when you hear the reality of losing a giant like this.
Yeah. No, you interviewed her. What can you tell us about the time you spent with her? Because people would say she had a great sense of humor, but people could say she could be a little prickly.
Yeah, I can't pretend to have spent a lot of time, and I did, some calls on the phone where she was in decent spirits and happy to talk about the music and all of that. I mean, most remarkable to me, I saw her sing last year, I guess one of the last half a dozen shows or so last spring, up in Poughkeepsie at a theater for a benefit, and she just sounded spectacular.
Yes.
I mean, I know it was hit or miss in the later years, but her singing was just magnificent, and just a reminder of for everything else and the noise and the rumors and the prickliness and everything off stage, that she could still deliver something that nobody else could do.
And what was that? I mean, Rolling Stone called her the greatest singer of all time.
Yeah.
That's not just, somewhere on the list. That's at the very top.
Yeah, it's interesting because I've been talking to people about that. Like, there are plenty of great singers, and what is it to have people say the greatest singer? This thing that we all pretty much all do, at one time or other, to be the greatest in the world at doing that thing. And I think one thing that's really easy to overlook, we think of great singers as having this like superpower. They just have that voice. It's just there. But she worked so hard. There was such musicality. Her piano playing, her arranging, the way that she approached a lyric. I worked with Mary J. Blige on that piece. She wrote the thing for Rolling Stone when she was named the greatest singer of all time. And Mary talked about single words that Aretha would sing, not just single songs, but the way that she could deliver one word that would change your whole understanding of that song and that emotion. I mean, it was really such an incredible power, above and beyond just the voice you happen to be born with.
Yeah, and then talk about that one word, respect. That was 1967 when she won the first Grammy for Respect. That song still lives today and is still relevant today. What is it about that song that became a national anthem for so many different kinds of people, do you think?
Well, I think that, as an anthem for women, as an anthem for the civil rights movement, I mean, this incredible articulation of power and strength and self-respect. We forget Otis Redding wrote that song. She found, just an ask for respect from his woman.
Yes.
She turned it into respect from the world, for her being a woman. And when he sang it at the Monterey Pop Festival, Otis said, this girl took that song away from me.
Yeah.
That's hers now.
Yeah, she said that when she sang it, it was a demand for mutual respect in a relationship. Here, here, here.
And the interplay with her backup singers, the sense of, common cause and togetherness in that. It wasn't just selfishness. It was about strength. It was about independence and about sharing that, and everybody looking for that.
My recollection is that that's about the time, or maybe it is, when she went down to Muscle Shoals, which is not exactly Detroit. And Aretha Franklin went down into this swampy rock and roll place and emerged with a different sound. She had an ability to play across all kinds of different genres. That must have also been one of her real talents.
Well, and really, drawing from her gospel training, her gospel background, never letting that go no matter what kind of song she was singing. She had rock and roll and soul and pop and jazz singing in her, but that, the gospel at the heart of that was something that was so washed out of a lot of great singers, that they had to compromise that to become pop stars, and she compromised nothing. She got to the heart of what it was that she was raised in and made that this universal sound, and this sound that took over the pop charts on its own terms.
All right. Thank you very much, Alan. Trey Johnson is joining us. He writes about music, race, politics, and culture for Rolling Stone. Trey, let's talk about Aretha Franklin's range. You know, she could do gospel, she could do pop, she could do rock and roll. Her range was amazing, even opera in some cases. Where do you think she got her confidence as a performer?
You know, I think she got a lot of that confidence from her upbringing in the Black church community. I think, too, you know, I think a lot of what I think Aretha's power was is that she knew how to inhabit a song authentically. And so she wasn't someone who just kind of phoned it in. She really kind of chewed up every line and lived it out an experience that made you feel like it was part of her as a person.
And Trey, what about her cultural role? We've been talking about her artistry. Put her in context in terms of American music.
Oh, Matt, you know, as Rolling Stone has cited themselves, you know, Aretha is probably the greatest voice we've ever had. I think, too, it's about that power that she had with her voice, that constantly ground people in a common sense of humanity and struggle and power, whether it's about love or the obvious things around respect and dignity. I think, too, what's special about Aretha was that, you know, she used her music and she used her platform to also constantly advance and lean into the causes of equal rights and civil rights for her community. And I think those things together made her voice not only richer, but I think more honest and true for a lot of people.
Yeah, she grew up singing in the church choir in her father's church. Vladimir Dudier has been in Detroit all week at the church, and we were talking about the influence that the church played in her life. Can you talk about that, how that influenced her as a singer and a young girl?
Yes, you know, from my understanding about Aretha, is that a great deal of it was about where she drew her strength from. And I think her sense of perspective and story, you know, a lot of her songs, particularly her love songs, are ones that have been elevated to kind of like transcendental status. But at the end of the day, I think that she was often tapping into the experiences of families and communities and couples and households that she was immersed in every day. You know, I think she was such an important instrument to vocalize, in particular, the story of the Black woman who wasn't always given the platform for talking about their love stories and their hardships and what it meant for them to kind of put on like a metaphorical hard hat every day and step out into the world and hold your head high.
I like that, Trey. Metaphorical hard hat. Nicely done.
Well done, Trey. We'll end it there. Thanks so much for being with us.